My name is Alexandra Carter, and I'm 28 years old. What happened at my brother's engagement party 3 months ago is still being talked about in our entire extended family. Picture this: 150 guests in an elegant garden venue, my parents standing at the microphone publicly calling me a disappointment and a failure while praising my younger brother as their pride and joy. The humiliation was crushing. But here's what nobody saw coming. When I handed my brother that letter during his speech, his confident smile vanished so fast you could hear the collective gasp from 3 tables away. The color drained from his face as he read the first line, and what happened next made my mother scream loud enough that the neighbors called to complain. But here's the twist nobody expected. That letter didn't just contain words, it contained proof. Proof of something my golden child brother had hidden from everyone, including his perfect fiancée. Something that would destroy everything he'd built his reputation on. Before we dive into this story, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy stories about family secrets coming to light. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. I love connecting with people who understand that sometimes the failure of the family knows more than anyone realizes. Let me take you back to that morning when I thought I was just attending my little brother's engagement celebration. I arrived at the Rosewood Garden venue at 10 a.m., 2 hours before the party started. The place looked stunning. White roses everywhere, fairy lights strung between the trees, exactly the kind of perfect setup that screamed, "Look how successful we are." I'd contributed $5,000 to help pay for this party, though of course nobody would ever mention that. "Alexandra," finally my mother said, looking me up and down with that familiar expression of disappointment. "That dress, couldn't you have worn something more feminine? You look like you just came from some dead-end job interview." I glanced down at my simple black dress and blazer. Clean, professional, appropriate for a family celebration. "Good morning, Mom. The venue looks beautiful." She barely acknowledged my greeting. "Your brother looks so handsome in his suit. A real success story. You should see how proud his fiancée's family is to be joining ours." The comparison wasn't subtle, and it wasn't new. For 28 years I'd been the daughter who couldn't live up to expectations. Jake was the golden child, charming, successful, everything our parents wanted in a son. "Alexandra, can you help move those chairs?" Dad called out, not even looking in my direction. "But don't reorganize everything like you always do." I bit my tongue. The chair arrangement was clearly wrong. Guests would be staring into the sun during the ceremony, but pointing that out would just make me the difficult one again. What they didn't know, what I'd never told them, was that I wasn't actually struggling like they thought. I'd been quietly building something incredible for the past 3 years. But in this family, my achievements would somehow become another failing. Too secretive, too independent, not feminine enough for their expectations. "Of course, Dad," I said, keeping my voice level. "I'll make sure everything's perfect for Jake. Family support is everything," Dad said, appearing beside me as I repositioned a chair. "Jake understands that. He's always been the one who gets it." The jab was subtle but clear. At 28, my apparent lack of traditional success was a bigger source of family shame than any effort I made could overcome. Around us, relatives whispered their assessments. "Still no husband for Alexandra. All those years in college and look where it got her." My cousin Ryan smirked from across the garden. "Hey Alexandra, maybe if you spent less time on whatever it is you do, and more time dating like normal women, you'd have something to show for yourself." The laughter rippled through our relatives. I wanted to tell them about the late nights, the sacrifices, the carefully planned strategy that was finally paying off. I wanted to mention that success isn't always visible on the surface. But what was the point? "She's just never found her path," Mom explained to anyone listening. "Some people are just late bloomers, I suppose." I straightened another chair, my hands steady despite the familiar sting of their dismissal. They had no idea who I really was, and maybe it was better that way. During the pre-party mingling, Aunt Linda chirped up while sipping her mimosa latte. "So Alexandra, how's that little startup thing you mentioned last year? Still playing around with computers?" "It's actually going really well," I said quietly. The group around us chuckled condescendingly. "A startup," Uncle Paul laughed. "Alexandra and her big dreams. Remember when she said she was going to change the world?" Jake glided over, looking perfect in his designer suit, his arm around his fiancée Sarah. "Alexandra always has these ambitious projects," he said with that patronizing smile I knew so well. Last year it was the app thing. This year it's probably something else. At least she keeps trying, right? Sarah smiled politely, but I could see the pity in her eyes. The poor sister who couldn't get her life together. That's sweet that she has hobbies, she said. Hobbies. 3 years of 80-hour weeks building something revolutionary, reduced to a hobby. My phone buzzed with a notification that made my pulse quicken. It was from my lawyer, confirming that all the paperwork had been filed that morning. The timing was perfect. I could have shown them the email right then, could have pulled up the articles that would be published next week, could have mentioned the deal that closed yesterday morning. But I had something better planned. You're right, Jake, I said instead. I do keep trying. The irony was perfect. Standing there in that garden, surrounded by people who saw me as the family disappointment, while my phone contained proof that everything was about to change. Jake squeezed Sarah's hand. The important thing is family support. Sarah's family has been incredible. They really understand success and ambition. Another subtle dig, another reminder that I didn't measure up to their standards. I watched Jake work the crowd, charming everyone with stories of his latest promotion at the marketing firm, his new condo, his perfect relationship. He was good at this, the golden child performance. He'd been perfecting it for years. What he didn't know was that I'd been investigating something for months. Something that would change everything. Such a handsome couple, someone gushed. Jake has really made something of himself. We're so proud, Mom beamed, her arm around Jake. He's everything we could have hoped for in a son. The singular usage wasn't lost on me. As if they only had one son worth mentioning. I'd been patient for years, watching Jake bask in the praise while I worked in the shadows. But patience was about to pay off in ways none of them could imagine. The letter in my jacket pocket felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Inside it was information that would destroy Jake's perfect image forever. If you've ever felt like the black sheep of your family, like your efforts go unnoticed while someone else gets all the credit, type I see you in the comments. I see you, and what's coming next will show you why sometimes the quiet ones are the most dangerous. The afternoon celebration was in full swing when Jake stood up, tapping his champagne glass with a knife. The conversations died down as 150 guests turned their attention to him. He looked confident, radiant, like he was born for moments like this. Thank you all for being here today, Jake began, his voice carrying across the garden. Sarah and I are overwhelmed by the love and support from both our families. He gestured to Sarah, who beamed up at him with genuine adoration. She had no idea what was coming. Before we officially announce our engagement. Timeline, Jake continued, I want to take a moment to talk about family. About the people who shaped me into the man I am today. His eyes found our parents, who were practically glowing with pride. My parents, Richard and Margaret Carter, taught me everything about hard work, integrity, and success. They showed me what it means to be a man of character. The crowd murmured appreciatively. I felt sick, and my sister Alexandra, Jake's gaze landed on me, and I saw something flicker across his face. Was it guilt? Fear? Alexandra has always marched to the beat of her own drum. We may be different, but I love her anyway. The condescending tone was unmistakable. Even in his moment of triumph, he couldn't resist putting me down. The crowd chuckled at his loving dismissal of his oddball sister. That's when I stood up. Jake, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Before you continue, there's something I need to give you. I reached into my purse and pulled out the letter. It was sealed in a crisp white envelope with his name written on the front in my careful handwriting. Jake's confident smile faltered slightly. Alex, this isn't really the time. Trust me, I said, walking toward him. You'll want to read this now, in front of everyone. The crowd watched with curious interest as I handed him the envelope. Sarah looked confused but smiled supportively at her fiancé. Jake's hands trembled slightly as he took the letter. Can't this wait until after? Open it, Jake, I said firmly. I think your fiancé and her family deserve to know what's inside. Something in my tone must have warned him, because the color started draining from his face before he even broke the seal. He opened the envelope and unfolded the single sheet of paper inside. I watched his eyes scan the first line, then widen in horror. His face went completely white, and the confident smile vanished so completely it was like watching a mask fall off. What does it say, honey? Sarah asked, reaching for the letter. Jake jerked it away from her, his hands now visibly shaking. It's nothing, he stammered, but his voice cracked. Just some Some stupid joke. Read it out loud, I suggested, my voice carrying across the now silent garden. I think everyone would enjoy hearing about your recent activities. Jake's eyes met mine, and I saw pure panic. Alex, please, we can discuss this privately, the way we've discussed everything else in this family, in whispered conversations where I'm always the disappointment. I shook my head. No, Jake, your fiancée deserves to know who she's marrying. Sarah stood up, confusion turning to concern. Jake, what's going on? What's in that letter? The entire garden had gone silent. 150 guests watching this family drama unfold, sensing something big was about to explode. Jake looked around desperately, as if searching for an escape route. Should I read it for you? I offered, reaching for the letter. Jake pulled it against his chest protectively. You wouldn't, he whispered. Try me. That's when our mother intervened. Alex, stop this nonsense immediately. This is your brother's special day. But even she could see that something was seriously wrong. Jake looked like he might faint. Sarah, I said, turning to Jake's fiancée. Did you know that your fiancé has been embezzling money from his company for the past 18 months? The words dropped like a bomb. Sarah's face went white. The crowd gasped collectively. That's a lie, Jake shouted, but his voice was high and panicked. I pulled out my phone and began reading from the screen. According to the financial records I obtained through a private investigator, Jake Carter has been systematically stealing client payments and depositing them into a personal account he opened under a fake business name. The silence was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop in that garden. The total amount stolen is approximately $340,000, I continued. The money was used to fund his lifestyle, the new condo he's so proud of, the expensive engagement ring, this party we're at right now. Sarah's hands flew to her mouth. Jake, tell me this isn't true. Jake was shaking now, the letter crumpled in his white-knuckled fists. Alex is lying. He's jealous, he's always been jealous. The letter contains copies of bank statements, transaction records, and testimony from 3 witnesses who saw Jake redirecting client payments. I looked directly at Sarah. It also contains the contact information for Detective Mills at the Fraud Division, who will be very interested in speaking with Jake on Monday morning. This is insane, Dad shouted, standing up. Alex, how dare you make these accusations? They're not accusations, I said calmly. They're facts. Jake's been stealing money to fund the perfect life he's been showing off. The company discovered the theft last week. They've been building a case. Sarah turned to Jake, tears streaming down her face. Is this true? Jake, look at me. Is any of this true? Jake opened his mouth but no words came out. The letter fell from his hands, fluttering to the ground like a dying bird. That's when we all saw it, his expression of complete defeat. The mask had finally come off completely. Oh my God, Sarah whispered. It is true. I can see it in your face. The crowd erupted in chaos. People talking over each other, chairs scraping as guests stood up for a better view. Someone was recording with their phone. Jake's perfect moment had become his complete destruction. How did you find out? Jake finally managed to ask, his voice barely audible. I've been investigating you for months, I said. Ever since I noticed the inconsistencies in your financial situation. A marketing associate salary doesn't pay for a $300,000 condo and a $15,000 engagement ring, Jake. I may be the family disappointment, but I'm not stupid. Sarah was sobbing now, her perfect engagement celebration dissolving around her. How could you do this? How could you lie to me, to everyone? Sarah, please. Jake reached for her but she stepped away. Don't touch me. Don't ever touch me again. She yanked the engagement ring off her finger and threw it at his feet. We're done. We're completely done. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Sarah gathered her purse and walked toward the exit. Her family quickly followed, shooting disgusted looks at Jake as they passed. This is what you wanted, isn't it? Jake turned on me, desperation turning to rage. You couldn't stand that I was successful, that I was happy. You weren't successful, I interrupted. You were a thief. There's a difference. Mom rushed to Jake's side. There has to be an explanation. Jake would never. He would, and he did, I said. The evidence is overwhelming. The police will probably be arresting him within the week. That's when Dad exploded. You've destroyed your brother's life, your own family. Are you happy now? I looked around at the chaos. Guests whispering and staring. Jake collapsed in a chair with his head in his hands. Sarah gone. The perfect party in ruins. I'm not happy, I said quietly. I'm relieved. Relieved that the truth is finally out. Relieved that Sarah found out before she married a criminal. And relieved that this family finally knows who the real failure is. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Within an hour the party was over. Guests had fled, leaving behind half-eaten appetizers and abandoned champagne glasses. Jake sat alone at what should have been the head table, staring at the engagement ring Sarah had thrown at his feet. "How long have you known?" he asked me as I helped the catering staff clean up. "I started suspecting 6 months ago," I said. "You were living way beyond your means, but everyone was so busy praising you that nobody asked." "So you hired a private investigator to spy on your own brother?" "I hired someone to find the truth." "There's a difference." Jake laughed bitterly. "The truth." "Right. And what truth? Should I know about you, Alex? What have you been hiding while you've been playing detective?" That's when I smiled for the first time all day. "I'm glad you asked." I pulled out my phone and showed him the screen. "This is the email I received yesterday morning, Jake. It's from TechCrunch, confirming that my startup was just acquired by Google for $50 million. Jake's face went from bitter anger to shock. $50 million? The deal closed yesterday at 9 a.m., right before I came here. Those computer games everyone's been mocking? That app you called a hobby? Google thought it was worth enough to buy my entire company." The silence stretched between us. "Finally," Jake whispered. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Because this family taught me that my achievements don't matter. Every time I tried to share something I was proud of, you or mom or dad would minimize it, mock it, or ignore it completely. So I stopped sharing." $50 million, Jake repeated, like he couldn't process the number. "After taxes and paying back my investors, I'll walk away with about $30 million. Enough to never have to worry about money again. Enough to help people I actually care about. Enough to prove that the family failure was actually the only one building something real." Jake put his head in his hands. "I'm going to prison, aren't I? Probably. The evidence is overwhelming, and now that Sarah's family knows, they'll make sure the prosecutor throws the book at you. Her father is a district attorney, remember? This is all your fault," Jake said, but there was no fight left in his voice. "No, Jake. This is all your fault. I just made sure the truth came out before you could hurt more people." I left Jake sitting there, in the ruins of his perfect party, and walked to my car. My phone was buzzing with notifications, texts from relatives, missed calls from our parents, and one message that made me smile. It was from my assistant. "Boss, the Google announcement is live. You're trending on TechCrunch. Also, 3 major news outlets want interviews about the acquisition." The quiet kid everyone dismissed was about to become a very public success story. But the real satisfaction wasn't the money or the recognition. It was the knowledge that I'd protected an innocent woman from marrying a criminal, and I'd finally shown my family exactly who they'd been underestimating all these years. Over the next few days, the consequences rippled through our family like an earthquake. Jake was arrested on Monday morning at his office. The perp walk made the local news, with my parents' faces clearly visible in the background as they left the courthouse. The theft had been even worse than I'd discovered. Jake had stolen nearly $400,000 over 2 years, using increasingly sophisticated methods to hide his tracks. His company was filing bankruptcy, and several of his co-workers were losing their jobs because of his actions. Sarah's family released a statement thanking an anonymous family member for bringing the truth to light before their daughter could legally tie herself to a criminal. Sarah herself sent me a brief text. "Thank you. I know this couldn't have been easy." But the most interesting reaction came from my parents. Dad called me 3 days after Jake's arrest. "We need to talk," he said. His voice was different, smaller somehow. We met at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 3 days. "Is it true about the Google deal?" he asked without preamble. "It's true. $50 million? Yes." He stared into his coffee for a long time. "How long have you been building this company?" 3 years. Since right after college graduation. And we never asked. We never took it seriously." "No, you didn't. We thought Jake was the successful one. The one with the stable job. The nice apartment. The perfect relationship. Jake was a thief. Dad. Everything he had was stolen." Dad winced. "And you were actually building an empire." "I was building something, yes. while you were all busy praising Jake for living beyond his means and dismissing me for working 80-hour weeks. Why didn't you tell us? I looked at my father, really looked at him. When was the last time any of you asked me about my work without mocking it? When was the last time you showed genuine interest in anything I was doing? He couldn't answer. You taught me that my achievements would either be minimized or ignored. So I stopped sharing them with you. Your mother is devastated, he said finally, about Jake's arrest or about discovering she spent years mocking a multimillionaire. The harsh truth made him flinch, both I suppose. I'm sorry Jake made the choices he made, I said. I'm sorry Sarah got hurt. I'm sorry his coworkers lost their jobs. But I'm not sorry for exposing the truth. The whole family is talking about it. Everyone wants to know how we missed this. You missed it because you saw what you wanted to see. Jake fit your image of success, so you never looked deeper. I didn't fit that image, so you never looked at all. Dad left that meeting a broken man. I almost felt sorry for him. Mom's reaction was different. She went on a social media campaign, painting Jake as a victim of a corrupt system and me as a vindictive brother who destroyed the family. The posts were screenshot and shared widely, usually with comments like the delusion is strong with this one and someone's in denial about raising a criminal. The irony was delicious. While Mom was trying to rehabilitate Jake's reputation, tech blogs were writing articles about my overnight success and my genius-level innovation. Forbes reached out for an interview about young entrepreneurs. TechCrunch wanted to do a feature on my company's development process. I was invited to speak at conferences. VCs were calling with investment opportunities for my next venture. The failure of the family was being celebrated as one of the most promising young minds in tech. But the most satisfying moment came 2 months later, when Jake was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison. As he was led away in handcuffs, he looked back at the courtroom where a parent sat crying in the front row. His eyes found mine in the gallery. For just a moment, the old arrogance flickered back. Enjoy your money, he mouthed silently. I mouthed back, enjoy your cell. That evening, I was at home in my new penthouse apartment, a real one this time, not funded by theft, when my doorbell rang. It was Sarah. I wanted to thank you in person, she said when I opened the door. And to apologize. You don't owe me an apology. She was right, and we both knew it. I'm starting over, she continued. New job, new city, new life. And I wanted you to know that, what you did, exposing Jake before I married him, it saved my entire future. I'm glad something good came out of this mess. Can I ask you something? How did you stay so calm when you handed him that letter? If I had been in your position, I would have been shaking. I thought about it. I'd been planning that moment for months. I knew exactly what would happen when he read it. The hard part wasn't staying calm, it was waiting so long to act. Why did you wait? Why not just turn him in quietly? Because this family needed to see the truth publicly. They needed to understand that their golden child was a fraud, and their disappointment was actually the success story. Private justice wouldn't have taught them anything. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. Public humiliation as education. Something like that. She left shortly after, but her words stayed with me. Public humiliation. As education? That's exactly what it had been. 6 months later, I was featured on the cover of Entrepreneur magazine. The headline read, From Family Outcast to Tech Titan, the Alex Carter story. The article detailed my journey from dismissed younger son to successful CEO, including the dramatic revelation at Jake's engagement party. The story went viral. #FamilyFamilyrevenge success started trending. People shared their own stories of being underestimated by family members who later regretted their dismissive attitudes. But the best part was the final paragraph of the article, where I was quoted saying, "Success isn't about proving people wrong, it's about building something meaningful regardless of who believes in you. The validation is nice, but it was never the point." That quote was shared thousands of times. It became an inspirational meme. People tattooed it on their bodies. My parents never reached out after the article was published. Jake wrote me one letter from prison, asking for money for the commissary. I didn't respond. The extended family had split into camps. Some reached out to congratulate me and apologize for their treatment over the years. Others doubled down, claiming I was vindictive and that Jake was the real victim. I didn't care about either group. What I cared about was the new family I was building, my team at the company, the entrepreneurs I was mentoring, the investors who believed in my vision for the future. People who valued substance over appearance, who celebrated real achievement instead of stolen success. 1 year later, I started the Carter Foundation, focused on helping young entrepreneurs who don't fit traditional molds. The application asks one simple question: tell us about a time when people underestimated you. The responses are incredible. Stories of kids from broken homes building tech companies. Stories of immigrants creating jobs in their new communities. Stories of people who were written off by their families and went on to change the world. Each grant we award, each success story we support, feels like another small victory over the voices that said I wasn't good enough, smart enough, successful enough. But the real victory was that moment in the garden when Jake's perfect facade crumbled and the truth finally came to light. Not just the truth about his crimes, but the truth about who had really been building something meaningful all along. They called me a failure until one letter wiped the smile off his face. But the letter didn't make me successful, it just revealed the success I'd been building in secret while they were busy celebrating a fraud. And that, it turns out, was the sweetest revenge of all. So here's what I learned from that disaster of an engagement party. Family respect isn't automatically given, it's earned through character and genuine achievement. Success isn't always visible, and the people who mock your efforts might be the ones living on borrowed time. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply reveal the truth and let it speak for itself. If you're the black sheep of your family, if your achievements go unnoticed while others get praised for less, if you've ever been called a failure by people who don't really know you, keep building. Keep working. Keep believing in yourself. Because the day will come when the truth reveals itself, and on that day you'll be ready. Your boundaries matter. Your work matters. Your success matters, even if they can't see it yet. You don't owe anyone a smaller version of yourself to make them comfortable. And you certainly don't have to accept being dismissed or diminished in the name of family harmony. The price of standing up for truth can be high. I lost my birth family, but what I gained was worth it. Self-respect, genuine relationships built on honesty, and a life where my achievements speak louder than anyone's expectations. What truth do you need to reveal today? What success have you been building in secret? Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever been underestimated by your own family, you're not alone. Comment truth matters if you believe in standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that the quiet ones are often building something incredible. Subscribe and hit the notification bell for more stories about family dynamics, hidden success, and the power of truth. I'd love to know, are you Team Alex for exposing the truth, or do you think family loyalty should come first? Let me know in the comments. Remember, your success is not negotiable, and the truth always finds a way to surface.